have on the next level in the professional locker room? I mean, how will he be received when he ultimately gets drafted? Some people say that he's a mid to late round draft choice as it stands right now after his announcement. So is it going to be, how is he going to be received once he actually goes into that locker room? I mean, right now, everything, all the chips are out on the table. I mean, everybody that in the NFL knows who he is as a person. They know what his preference is as a person. So how will they treat him when he goes into that locker room? Now, and I would actually, as you ponder that, I'd ask you to think about what's gone on with Richie Incognito. And for those who follow that Richie Incognito story, and we'll bleed that into this one just a bit, he's a racist. He's a bigot. He's a foul character in the locker room, and just in the Miami locker room. So what happens if he gets his hands on a kid like Michael Sams in his rookie campaign? What happens when you got a rogue like that in the locker room, as he's now not being alleged, but these are actually some facts, some stiff facts that are coming out? What happens when you get a guy like that, big with physical stature, obviously one of the locker room veterans, somebody who has a voice in the locker room, somebody who obviously folks kind of look up to, some are somewhat intimidated by, somewhat considered the leader. What happens when Michael Sams has to be encountered by somebody like that? What kind of reception is he going to get by somebody like? Because I'm going to tell you right now, there's not just one Richie Incognito in the NFL. There's probably several that don't get a lot of light, and it is because of Jonathan Martin and what he went through and the depths that he dropped to, that Richie Incognito story is, and the Jonathan Martin story is on the landscape right now. But there are some other folks like that can't wait. They're probably licking their chops to actually get a chance to go one-on-one with a guy like Michael Sams, even though he's come out and talked about his sexual preference. I don't know. I think that story remains to be told. And then I would ask, who's impacted worse when a kid like Michael Sams comes out, or when an athlete, for that matter, comes out? And I mean, even think about your own personal experience as athletes. Who gets impacted the most when you look at men versus women? Are men, because of the macho position that we consistently find ourselves in, are we impacted more, or are women impacted more? Because I would think, I don't know, that just begs to question. I'd really love to get perspective on that. I'm really interested to see who cares about this particular situation, and what has Michael Sams actually really done. I mean, when you look at what his brother said, his brother, who's been in jail for a while now, he's actually been being held for like 44 different separate counts, crimes that are going to have him in jail for a long time. His brother heard the news for the first time on television, and he seems to be okay with it because he has this unconditional love for his own brother. So as a family member, he's basically saying, my brother is who he is right now. I'm not going to pass judgment on him. I still love him exactly the way I loved him before, and he has my support, even though he cannot physically be there with his brother, because it seems like the brother, whose name is Josh Sams, is not going to be getting out anytime soon. So again, these right now are pending charges. There's 44 charges against him, but at some point, it seems like he's going to have to face those charges. So he won't be able to be there with Michael personally or in the flesh. But it's nice to know that he stepped out though and said, hey, listen, it doesn't matter. It's still my brother. I'm not going to cut the cord right now and throw him to the wolves. I'm not going to disassociate myself. I'm not going to disown him. I mean, it's still my brother. Michael Sams himself, he said he told teammates as late as last August about his sexual inclination. He told his Missouri teammates. He said before he came out, he was really actually quite scared to actually make the announcement, but he brought his teammates together, and so to his surprise, he said that his teammates were overly receptive of him. They gave him a ton of support, and I think for the most part, as an athlete, somebody who's been in the locker room with men, you tend to know if something. Let's just say not necessarily just in the locker room environment itself, but just generally speaking, if you are around men or women, if you're around women, you typically know if those people, just by their actions and their mannerisms, if they're gay or they're straight. I mean, that's just the case. You may have somebody that slides beneath the radar and he might surprise you, but generally speaking, it's a tough call. It's not very difficult to ascertain if a guy is gay or if he's straight. I mean, he has certain mannerisms that you pick up on. He has certain tendencies that he picks up on. I am not, and I'll put this on the record right now. I really, literally, while I said initially I was on the fence, I didn't know where I weighed in on him. I can say definitively I'm not homophobic. Okay, I'm not gay, but at the same time, you can be who you want to be. That's the way this society is. That's the way this world is. But from an athletic standpoint, I feel like you have an obligation, like Michael Sam's, to tell people who you are, and so that they can actually have an opportunity. If it's something that doesn't meet the norm, doesn't fit the norm, you have an obligation to let people know. You shouldn't surprise people in that environment but by letting them know after the fact that you are not a straight man. That's just disruptive. It's divisive inside of the locker room. I think men need to have an opportunity, no matter what level that we play on or we compete on, we have to have an opportunity to digest that type of information and then form opinions and then deal with them accordingly thereafter. In advance, we need to know who you are. Therefore, we're not surprised by it. Because the thing that Michael Sam's, what he could have done is he could have gone his entire college career at Missouri and never told a soul, and then came out after the draft, and then because he wanted to protect his money, he came out after the draft, after he'd been slotted where he was going to be slotted, and then allowed an NFL team to pick him, and then came back in a tell-all and talked about his boyfriend at the University of Missouri. And I feel like if he would have done that, and if that was his timing, then he probably would have had a lot of folks at Missouri, a lot of teammates at Missouri that would have resented him, because he didn't give them the opportunity to form their own opinion of who Michael Sam's was after the fact. Okay, because I think this is a forgiving society. I don't think that people condemn folks because of their sexual orientation. I think that people condemn folks that sneak around and surprise them, and put them in a position that they feel like they've been deceived. No one, from a male perspective, who's shared a locker room with another man, no one wants to know later on, after you've played for 3 or 4 years with that man, that you showered with somebody who may have had feelings for you, or may have been looking at you in a much more compromising position while you were showering, for example, without knowing that person was gay. The fact is, if Michael Sam's tells the University of Missouri and his teammates who he is, and then they formed an opinion of how they want to deal with him, and they have a plan as to how they want to deal with him or not deal with him for that matter, then there's no element of surprise. There's no element of surprise, so they won't resent Michael Sam's after the fact. I think that's the way it works across the board. I really think that's the way it works across the board. Now, why it took him 2 years to talk about it is somewhat of a surprise. I don't know exactly what the motivation, what stimulated him to come out, and what prompted the timing to come out when it did. But 2 years, he could have done it 2 years ago before he transitioned into the program. I think there's some that still might say that, because some still might say that he had me in a compromising position. We shared intimate moments. I wish I would have known, unless they did know. I mean, they might have known. Like I said, you can't hide who you really are from the same sex. It's very difficult to do. I'm just going to tell you like it is. It's just very difficult to do, and I've never really been tricked. Unless there was this amazing disguise or whatever, and even still, there's just those mannerisms that I refer to that don't allow you to go so far beneath the radar where nobody really can detect who you actually are. So maybe some people could feel it, but then him actually coming out and articulating it gave them a sense of relief, and then maybe the feedback that you would hear consistently, or that was heard consistently, was, phew, I'm glad that's out of the way now. And then maybe some folks would say, I knew it all along. And maybe a small percentage of people would say, wow, didn't know that. Some people tend to bury their head in the sand and maybe not identifying signs that are abundantly clear. But perhaps that was the situation at the University of Missouri. Now, as that translates to the NFL, the situation is going to be much more different because the story is out in front of them, okay? There's no sliding in the back door with your sexual orientation now if you're Michael Samms. You're coming out right now, says that when you transition to the NFL, you're letting the general managers who have to decide as to whether or not they want to introduce you to their locker room, into their environment, you're putting all those GMs on notice right now. If you select me in the mid to late rounds of this draft, here's what you get. You get a gay man who's going to operate in the same environment as a lot of straight men. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's going to be other gay men who are not as brave as Michael Samms, who are not motivated the same way as Michael Samms, who feel like he is a hero for them. And perhaps you're going to hear some other guys come out now, but their timing is not going to be as good as Michael Samms because they've been already immersed into that locker room. Michael Samms proactively has put himself in a position where he can be accepted or not be accepted, in most cases, so he can be accepted. That's the way this society works. They're going to take some time in the off season now as they get ready for their off season drills, and he'll come in and they're going to have a little bit of trepidation initially. They're going to test the handshake. They're going to watch his body language. They're going to, for some who are a bit homophobic, they're going to really be cautious with their interaction with him. But then when he gets out there and he straps the pads on and he starts to do what he does on the football field, everybody has a short memory because then he's going to do what he came to do, and that's to play football and help better a team. Right now, there's one half of the NFL teams right now, one half of the NFL general managers right now say that they would consider on a medium level of bringing Michael Samms into their camp. The other half, 14 of those teams, say that they have low consideration of drafting Michael Samms anywhere from the mid to late rounds. The Buffalo Bills, although they have very stout defensive ends on both sides, are highly interested in his ability. Denver Broncos general manager, or vice president of operations, and now general manager John Elway is on record as saying he is proud of Samms and the fact that he came out, and he will evaluate him as he would any other player as he's coming through the combines and as he's on the draft boards. They'll evaluate him as a talent and not for his personal actions outside of the locker room or off of the football field. They're going to just evaluate him as an NFL draft prospect. And I was really proud of John Elway for making that type of a statement, man. And there's huge ramifications from the gay community and from other communities that would not allow him to take any other position, because I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of gay people that watch Denver Bronco football. And for all the other NFL teams, there's a lot of gay people that watch NFL football. And quite frankly, if you alienate this man, then you also alienate that base. And these people have enough intelligence to understand that they have to be willing to receive him exactly the way their fan base is willing to receive him, because they're excited about it. And as a matter of fact, he's been given standing ovations around the world, or around the community. He's come out enough on different types of shows, etc. So that, I mean, it's out there. It's out there to a point where he should feel comfortable. It's not gonna be a smooth, easy transition into the locker room. Like I said, he's gonna have to take a couple of lumps and bumps. There is gonna be the possibility of a rogue, a thug like Richie Incognito inside of the locker room that's gonna take a gut punch or two. You're gonna have a couple slurs or whatever that people might utter under their breath, but that may happen in the onset, and then eventually it'll wane away, and then they'll evaluate him on the field for his productivity. You're never gonna hear someone in the booth on an NFL broadcast. You'll never hear Troy Aikman or Deion Sanders or Michael Irvin or Chris Berman or anybody in studio say, man, that dude is a sweet gay football player. They're just going to say he's a good football player after the fact. It won't have as much steam, I promise you, once we get into preseason. I mean, there'll be a lot of conversation about it as it leads up to the draft. It might even be minimal. On the other side of the coin. It might be minimal. It might fizz out very quickly